The coffee's warmth seeped through the thin paper cup, providing temporary relief to Kieran Zander's chapped hands as he hurried down the crowded Manhattan street. His 5-year-old daughter, Lily, skipped alongside him, her small hand clasped tightly in his as they navigated the morning rush of suits and stilettos. "Daddy, are we going to be late again?" Lily asked, her breath forming small clouds in the chilly October air. "Not if we hurry, sweetie," Kieran replied, checking his watch. It was 7:45 a.m., and he needed to drop Lily at kindergarten by 8 o'clock before rushing to his job at the auto repair shop by 8:30. The morning routine was always a delicate balancing act, especially since his wife had passed away 2 years ago. The pair turned the corner onto 57th Street, Kieran's pace quickening. He was so focused on making it to Lily's school on time that he didn't notice the woman who had stopped abruptly in front of him to check her phone. The collision was inevitable. "Oh, God," Kieran exclaimed as his coffee cup crushed between them, the lid popping off and sending the dark liquid cascading down the front of the woman's cream-colored designer coat. "I'm so sorry," the woman gasped, looking down at the spreading brown stain. For a moment, the busy street seemed to freeze as Kieran stood horrified at what he'd done. Zara Zimmerman, CEO of Zimmerman Technologies, had been in the midst of texting her assistant about an emergency board meeting when the hot liquid splashed across her $4,000 Burberry trench coat. In 20 years of building her tech empire, she had grown accustomed to commanding respect and maintaining perfect composure in any situation. But as she looked up from the coffee stain to meet the eyes of the man who'd crashed into her, something unexpected happened. He smiled. It wasn't a smug smile or an apologetic grimace. It was a genuine, warm smile that reached his tired blue eyes, crinkling the corners in a way that suggested he smiled often, despite whatever hardships he faced. "I'm so sorry," Kieran said again, frantically pulling a crumpled napkin from his pocket. "Please let me pay for the dry cleaning." Zara found herself momentarily speechless, an unusual state for a woman who regularly addressed shareholders and negotiated million-dollar deals. Something about this man's earnest apology and the little girl clutching his hand touched her in a way she couldn't immediately identify. "It's fine," she said finally, surprising herself with the gentleness in her voice. "Accidents happen." "Daddy spilled his coffee," the little girl announced solemnly, looking up at Zara with wide brown eyes. "He always says to be careful with drinks." Kieran's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Not my finest moment for setting an example, huh, lily pad?" He turned back to Zara. "I insist on paying for the cleaning, or a new coat if it's ruined." Zara looked at him more carefully now. His jacket was worn at the elbows, his boots scuffed but clean. Everything about him spoke of someone who took care of what little he had. The offer to replace her coat, which she knew would cost more than he likely made in a week, was both absurd and touchingly sincere. "Really, it's not necessary," Zara replied, surprising herself again. Normally, she would have been annoyed at the interruption to her day. "I have another coat in my office." Kieran's relief was visible. "At least let me buy you a replacement coffee. There's a shop just around the corner." Before Zara could respond, the little girl tugged at her father's hand. "Daddy's school." The smile fell from Kieran's face as he checked his watch again. "You're right, Lily. We're going to be late." He looked back at Zara apologetically. "I'm sorry again about your coat." "It's no problem," Zara heard herself say. "You should get your daughter to school." As they turned to go, Zara found herself calling after them. "Wait." Kieran looked back, eyebrows raised. "I have a car. I could give you a ride to your daughter's school. It's the least I can do since you've lost your coffee." The offer surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. Zara Zimmerman did not typically offer strangers rides in her chauffeured Mercedes. Nor did she rearrange her morning schedule for anyone, let alone a man who had just ruined her favorite coat. Kieran hesitated, clearly weighing the offer against his natural caution about accepting help from strangers. "Please, Daddy," Lily pleaded, already sensing the advantage of a car ride over their usual rushed walk. "That's incredibly kind," Kieran said finally. "If you're sure it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all," Zara replied, reaching for her phone to text her driver, who was parked just around the corner. As she did, she noticed Kieran attempting to discreetly wipe a smudge of grease from under his fingernails. A mechanic, she guessed, or someone who worked with his hands. Within moments, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the back door, his face carefully neutral despite the unusual sight of his employer with a coffee stain down her front and two strangers in tow. "Good morning, James," Zara said smoothly. "We're making a quick detour this morning." Lily's eyes widened as she climbed into the plush leather interior. "Is this a princess car?" Kieran looked mortified, but Zara laughed a genuine laugh that she realized she hadn't experienced in quite some time. "Not exactly," she replied, "but sometimes it feels that way." As they pulled away from the curb, Kieran gave the driver directions to Lily's school, his voice carrying the slight drawl of someone not originally from New York. "Thank you for this," he said, turning to Zara. "I'm Kieran, by the way, Kieran Zander, and this is my daughter, Lily." "Zara Zimmerman," she replied, extending her hand. His grip was firm, his palm calloused. The brief touch sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Zimmerman," Kieran repeated, his brow furrowing slightly. "Why does that sound familiar?" Zara was used to being recognized, but something about his genuine confusion was refreshing. "I run a technology company, nothing very exciting. Daddy fixes cars," Lily offered proudly. "He can fix anything that's broken." Kieran's smile returned, softer this time, directed at his daughter. "Not everything," Lily pad, "but I do my best." The car slowed as they approached the elementary school, joining the line of parents dropping off their children. Kieran gathered Lily's small backpack and helped her straighten her jacket. "Remember, Aunt Melissa is picking you up today," he reminded her. "I have to work late." "I know, Daddy," Lily replied with the exaggerated patience of a child who has heard the same instruction multiple times. When the car reached the drop-off point, Kieran stepped out and walked Lily to the entrance. Zara watched through the window as he knelt down to her level, straightened her little hat, and gave her a kiss on the forehead. Lily threw her arms around his neck in a fierce hug before skipping into the building. Something twisted in Zara's chest at the sight. At 36, she had achieved everything she had ever set out to do professionally, but her personal life consisted of a penthouse apartment she rarely saw, a string of relationships that had fizzled under the demands of her work schedule, and a persistent emptiness she typically ignored by working longer hours. When Kieran returned to the car, there was a softness in his expression that gradually shifted to embarrassment as he settled back into the seat. "Thank you again for the ride," he said. "You've saved us from being late 2 days in a row." "Happy to help," Zara replied, then found herself adding, "Where can we drop you now?" "Oh, just at the nearest subway station would be fine," Kieran said quickly. "I'm heading to Green Street Auto in Soho. We can take you there," Zara offered, nodding to her driver. "It's on my way." It wasn't, but the lie came easily. Kieran looked like he wanted to protest, but finally nodded. "That's really generous. Thank you." As the car navigated downtown, an awkward silence filled the backseat. Zara was usually comfortable with silence, but something about this man made her want to keep the conversation going. "So, you're a mechanic?" she asked. Kieran nodded. "Lead mechanic at Green Street. I've been there about 3 years now since we moved to the city." "From Texas." "Small town you've never heard of outside of Dallas." "My wife," he paused, a brief shadow crossing his face. "My late wife got a great job offer here. When she passed, I thought about going back, but Lily was already settled in her preschool, and, well, sometimes it's easier to stay put." "I'm sorry about your wife," Zara said quietly. Kieran nodded his thanks, the grief evident but well-worn, like a stone that had been carried so long its edges had smoothed. "What about you? Were you born in New York?" Connecticut, actually, Zara replied. But I've been in the city since college. Started my company in my dorm room at Columbia, if you can believe it. I can believe it, Kieran said, studying her with unexpected perceptiveness. You have that look. What look? Like someone who knows exactly what they want and doesn't stop until they get it. There was no judgment in his tone, just observation. Zara felt herself flush slightly. I suppose that's accurate. The car pulled up outside a garage with Green Street Auto painted in bold red letters above the entrance. Mechanics in blue coveralls were already at work, the sounds of tools and engines filling the air. This is me, Kieran said, gathering his worn messenger bag. He hesitated before opening the door. Listen, I still feel terrible about your coat. If you send the dry cleaning bill to the shop, I'll make sure it gets taken care of. Zara surprised herself once again. How about you buy me that replacement coffee instead? When's your lunch break? The words hung between them, unexpected and charged with possibility. Kieran looked genuinely startled, then a slow smile spread across his face, that same warm, genuine smile that had first caught her attention. I usually take lunch around 1 o'clock. There's a decent diner around the corner. I'll meet you here at 1 o'clock then, Zara said, already rearranging her mental schedule, knowing she would need to cancel her lunch meeting with a potential investor. As Kieran stepped out of the car, he leaned back in briefly. Just so you know, I wouldn't normally accept rides from strangers, but there was something about you that seemed trustworthy. After he closed the door, Zara sat in silence for a moment before directing her driver to her office building in Midtown. As the Mercedes pulled away, she found herself looking back at the garage, watching as Kieran disappeared inside. Everything all right, Miss Zimmerman? Her driver asked, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. Yes, James, Zara replied, touching the now cool coffee stain on her coat. Actually, I think it is. At 12:55, Zara found herself standing outside Green Street Auto, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. She had changed out of her stained coat into a more casual blazer she kept at the office, deliberately choosing to look less intimidating than her usual CEO attire. Kieran emerged from the garage promptly at 1 o'clock, his blue coveralls exchanged for jeans and a clean button-down shirt. There was still a hint of grease under his fingernails, despite his obvious attempt to scrub them clean. You came, he said, sounding both pleased and surprised. I said I would, Zara replied simply. The diner was small and unassuming, with vinyl booths and the scent of coffee and grilled onions in the air. It was the kind of place Zara hadn't set foot in for years, favoring expensive restaurants with reservations made weeks in advance. I recommend the Turkey Club, Kieran said as they settled into a booth. It's simple but surprisingly good. Zara studied the laminated menu, noting with amusement that the most expensive item was $14.95. I'll trust your recommendation. After they ordered a Turkey Club for each of them, coffee for Zara and iced tea for Kieran, an awkward silence settled between them. So, Kieran began, I Googled you during my break. Zara raised an eyebrow. Did you? I knew I recognized the name Zimmerman. Your company made that voice assistant software that's in everything now. Zimmer Tech, she nodded. That's our most well-known product, which makes you somewhat successful, Zara finished for him, deliberately understating the truth. Kieran let out a low whistle. I spilled coffee on one of the richest women in America. My mother would be mortified. Zara laughed. Is that why you agreed to have lunch with me? Damage control? No, Kieran replied honestly. I agreed because it's not every day a beautiful woman asks me to lunch, billionaire or not. The compliment caught her off guard. It had been a long time since someone had spoken to her so directly, without agenda or artifice. How did you end up as a mechanic? Zara asked, changing the subject. Kieran shrugged. My dad owned a garage back in Texas. I grew up with grease under my nails, learning how to take engines apart before I could drive. Went to college for business, actually, but after 2 years, I realized I was happier fixing things than sitting in offices talking about fixing things. There's value in working with your hands, Zara said. Building something tangible. Says the woman who built an empire on digital products, Kieran teased. Their food arrived, and the conversation flowed more easily as they ate. Kieran told her about raising Lily as a single father, about the challenges of balancing work with parenting, and about his dreams of one day owning his own garage. Zara found herself sharing stories of the early days of her company, the risks she took, and even her recent disillusionment with the corporate world she had helped create. Sometimes I feel like I'm just in meetings about meetings, she admitted. I started this company to build things that would change people's lives, but now I'm so removed from the actual creation process. Kieran listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his intelligence and genuine interest. For the first time in years, Zara felt seen as a person, not as a powerful CEO or a potential business connection. When the check came, Kieran insisted on paying. I promised you a replacement coffee, remember? This was more than coffee, Zara replied, but she allowed him to cover the bill, recognizing that it mattered to him. Outside the diner, they paused, neither quite ready to end the encounter. I should get back to work, Kieran said reluctantly. Me too, Zara agreed. Another pause. Would you? Kieran started. I was wondering if, Zara began simultaneously. They both laughed. You first, Kieran said. Zara took a breath. I was going to ask if you and Lily might like to join me for dinner sometime. The surprise on Kieran's face quickly gave way to a warm smile. I'd like that. Lily would too, I think. She's already asking about the coffee princess with the fancy car. Coffee princess, Zara repeated, amused. I've been called many things in business, but never that. They exchanged phone numbers, and Zara found herself looking forward to seeing him again with an excitement she hadn't felt in years. Over the next few weeks, dinner turned into multiple dinners, then outings with Lily to museums and parks. Zara discovered the joy of seeing the city through a child's eyes, while Kieran gradually revealed the depth of his character, his unwavering integrity, his devotion to his daughter, his quiet strength, and his surprising vulnerability. Their backgrounds could not have been more different. Kieran had grown up in a working-class family, learning the value of hard work and community. Zara was the daughter of successful academics who had expected excellence in all things. Yet somehow, they found common ground in their values, their sense of humor, and their desire for something genuine in a world that often felt artificial. 1 month after their first coffee-stained meeting, Kieran invited Zara to his apartment for dinner. It was a modest 2-bedroom in a walk-up building in Astoria, Queen's a far cry from her penthouse overlooking Central Park, but it was warm and homey in a way her place had never been. It's not much, Kieran said self-consciously as he showed her around. It's perfect, Zara replied honestly, taking in the finger paintings on the refrigerator, the well-worn but comfortable furniture, and the photographs of Lily with Kieran that lined the walls. Lily had been thrilled to help prepare dinner, proudly showing Zara how she could set the table all by herself. The meal was simple homemade spaghetti and meatballs, but it was the most enjoyable dinner Zara had had in years. After Lily went to bed, Kieran and Zara sat on the small balcony with glasses of inexpensive wine, looking out at the neighborhood lights. I've been meaning to ask you something, Kieran said, his voice serious. Does it bother you the difference in our situations? What do you mean? Zara asked, though she understood. Kieran gestured to the apartment around them. All this. The fact that I'm a mechanic who can barely afford after-school care for Lily and you. Zara considered the question carefully. When I was building my company, I dated men who were in my world: entrepreneurs, executives, investors. They understood my drive and my schedule, but those relationships always felt like extensions of my work life. There was always an agenda, always a calculation. She paused, looking at him directly. With you, I feel like I can just be Zara, not Zara Zimmerman, CEO. That's worth more to me than any financial compatibility. Kieran's expression softened. I just don't want you to feel like I'm after your money. I know how that might look to people. I know you better than that, Zara said simply. When he kissed her that night, it felt like the beginning of something real. As winter settled over the city, their relationship deepened. Zara found herself rearranging meetings to make time for school plays and weekend trips to the Natural History Museum. She learned the names of Lily's friends and teachers, helped with homework, and even mastered the art of French braiding, something she'd never imagined doing. Kieran, for his part, never seemed intimidated by her success. He took genuine interest in her work, offering insights from his unique perspective that sometimes made her see problems in a new light. He supported her long hours when necessary, but wasn't afraid to remind her when she needed balance. There were challenges, of course. The first time they were photographed together at a restaurant, the business media had a field day with headlines like "Tech Titan Slumming It" and "Zimmerman's Strange New Romance." The speculation about their relationship ranged from condescending to cruel. "Does this bother you?" Zara had asked, showing Kieran a particularly nasty article suggesting he was after her fortune. Kieran had merely shrugged. "People who don't know us don't matter. The people who do know us understand." His simple confidence was one of the things Zara loved most about him. He was secure in who he was, never trying to be something he wasn't to impress her or anyone else. 4 months after they met, Zara invited Kieran and Lily to spend Christmas at her family's home in Connecticut. She had been nervous about introducing them to her parents, who were brilliant but could be intimidatingly academic and sometimes unintentionally elitist. To her surprise and relief, her parents were charmed by both Kieran and Lily. Her father, a retired physics professor, spent hours discussing classic cars with Kieran, while her mother, a former literature professor, delighted in reading stories to Lily. "He's different from your usual type," her mother observed privately when they were preparing Christmas dinner. "Is that a criticism?" Zara had asked defensively. Her mother had smiled, shaking her head. "It's a compliment. He looks at you like you're a person, not a CEO or a potential business connection, and that little girl of his is absolutely delightful." On Christmas Eve, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from the excitement of the holiday, Kieran and Zara took a walk through the snow-covered garden behind her parents' house. "Your family is wonderful," Kieran said, his breath visible in the cold air. "I was nervous they wouldn't approve of the grease monkey their daughter is dating." "They see what I see," Zara replied, squeezing his gloved hand. "A good man who works hard and loves his daughter fiercely." Kieran stopped walking, turning to face her under the light of the full moon reflecting off the snow. "I love you too, you know. I think I have since that first day when you offered us a ride even though I'd ruined your expensive coat." The words hung between them, sincere and unadorned. Zara felt her heart expand. "I love you too," she said simply, the words feeling both new and completely natural. When he kissed her, surrounded by snow and silence, Zara knew with absolute certainty that the coffee spill that had brought them together was the best accident that had ever happened to her. By the following spring, Zara had begun spending most nights at Kieran's apartment, finding more comfort in its modest warmth than in her luxurious but sterile penthouse. Lily had fully embraced her presence, often asking when Zara was coming home or saving artwork from school specifically for her. It was during a rare weekend when all three of them were relaxing in the small living room, Lily coloring at the coffee table while Kieran and Zara reviewed plans for a classic car. Kieran was restoring in his spare time that Zara made a decision. "I've been thinking about making a change," she said casually. Kieran looked up from the blueprint. "What kind of change?" "I'm considering stepping back from day-to-day operations at Zimmerman Tech, becoming chairman of the board rather than CEO." Kieran put down his pencil, giving her his full attention. "That's a big step. Are you sure? Zara nodded. I built the company to create things that matter. Lately, it's been more about shareholder value and market dominance. I want to get back to innovation. What would you do instead? Start something smaller, more focused. Maybe a foundation that supports technical education for underprivileged kids. She glanced at Lily, who was absorbed in her coloring. Being around you two has reminded me of what really matters. Kieran reached over to take her hand. I support whatever you decide. Just make sure you're doing it for yourself, not because you think it's what I want. It's what I want, Zara assured him, but there's something else I've been thinking about too. What's that? Zara took a deep breath. I've been looking at some properties. There's a garage for sale in Brooklyn with an apartment above it. It's a good location, solid building. It could be a great place for someone to start their own business. Kieran's eyes widened as he realized what she was suggesting. Zara, that's an investment, she finished. One I believe in. You've talked about wanting your own garage someday. Why not now? I couldn't accept that, Kieran said, though there was longing in his voice. You could if we were partners, Zara replied, in every sense of the word. The meaning behind her words hung in the air between them. Are you proposing a business arrangement or something else? Kieran asked softly. Both, I think, Zara replied, her heart racing. I love you, Kieran. I love Lily. I want to build a life with you both. For a moment, Kieran was silent, and Zara feared she had overstepped, moving too quickly or presuming too much. Then he smiled that same warm, genuine smile that had first captivated her on a busy Manhattan street. I think, he said slowly, that we should talk about this properly. He glanced at Lily, who had looked up from her coloring, curious about the serious tone of their conversation. Lily Pad, can you go pick out a book for bedtime? I'll be there in a few minutes. Once Lily had skipped off to her room, Kieran turned back to Zara, taking both her hands in his. I want to be very clear, he said. I fell in love with you, not your money or what you can do for me. If we build a life together, it has to be as equals, even if our bank accounts aren't equal. I know that, Zara replied. It's one of the reasons I love you. That said, Kieran continued, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth, I'm not too proud to recognize a good opportunity when I see one. If you're serious about wanting to invest in a garage, we can talk about how to structure it fairly. And the other part? Zara asked, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. In answer, Kieran leaned forward and kissed her deeply. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining. I've been carrying around a ring for 2 weeks, trying to find the perfect moment. I should have known you'd beat me to the punch. Zara laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. Is that a yes? It's a yes from me, Kieran confirmed, but there's someone else you should ask. Understanding immediately, Zara nodded. Together, they went to Lily's room, where the little girl was sitting on her bed surrounded by books. Lily, Kieran said gently, Zara has something important to ask you. Kneeling down to be at eye level with the child, Zara took a small hand in hers. Lily, I love you and your dad very much. I was wondering how you would feel if I became a permanent part of your family if I became your stepmom. Lily's face scrunched up in thought, then broke into a wide grin that mirrored her father's. Would you live with us all the time, even on Tuesdays? Even on Tuesdays, Zara confirmed solemnly. And would you still help me with my braids and read me stories? Every day that you want me to. Lily seemed to consider this carefully before nodding decisively. Okay, but you have to promise not to spill coffee on Daddy's shirts. The three of them dissolved into laughter. And as Kieran pulled them both into a hug, Zara realized that all the success she had achieved in business paled in comparison to the joy of this moment. 1 year later, Zara stood in the apartment above Zander and Zimmerman Auto, watching as Lily twirled in her flower girl dress. Through the window, she could see the small gathering of friends and family in the courtyard behind the garage, where simple white chairs had been arranged in rows. You look beautiful, Kieran said from the doorway, resplendent in his wedding suit. You're not supposed to see me before the ceremony, Zara admonished, but her smile belied any real annoyance. I couldn't wait, he admitted, crossing the room to take her hands. "Besides, I wanted to give you something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped package. Curious, Zara opened it to find a keychain with a miniature coffee cup charm. "To remind us how we met," Kieran explained. Zara laughed, thinking of that fateful morning on a crowded Manhattan street. "Best coffee I never got to drink." As they descended the stairs to the courtyard, hand in hand with Lily skipping ahead, Zara reflected on how completely her life had changed in just over a year. She had stepped down as CEO, launched her education foundation, and helped Kieran establish his now thriving garage. More importantly, she had found the family she hadn't realized she was missing. The ceremony was simple, but perfect, just like the life they were building together. And when they exchanged vows under the afternoon sun, surrounded by the people they loved, Zara knew with absolute certainty that no business success could ever compare to the joy of this perfectly imperfect family they had created. As they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, with Lily clapping excitedly beside them, Zara silently thanked that cup of spilled coffee and the series of beautiful accidents that had led her home.